Hey there, how are you feeling? How are you feeling after that really intense full moon weekend? We had a lot of really potent Mars activations, and they tend to bring out a lot of fire, but also aggression. And in line with the energies of this full moon, a lot of these energies of aggression or anger, but also desire, might have actually come out and be realized through reflection and projection. And we will still tap into this full moon moment in a second, but what I really want to talk about today is the conjunction of Venus with Jupiter. Conjunction is always a merging of their energies, and you can see every kind of planetary pair in their own cycle with each other. Just like the sun and the moon create the new and full moon cycle and show us a different kind of quality depending on where we find ourselves in the cyclical nature of time, so do the other planets and their pairing also create specific kind of energetic cycles, time waves in nature, if you like, that talk to us about and reflect where and how we find ourselves in regards to their energies, their expression in our own psyche, in our own life, in our own heart and desire. Anyhow, Venus and Jupiter coming together is usually considered one of the most beautiful conjunctions there can be, because they were also in traditional and Hellenistic astrology considered the lesser and the greater benefic. So energies that we tend to associate with things that give us pleasure, that maybe come more easily to us and are not so much in resistance to our ego identity. With Venus, we're talking about values and desire and things that give us pleasure. With Jupiter, we're talking about what gives our life meaning, what is a greater vision. How do I extract a sense of purpose from the life experiences I accumulate that then gives me also a clarity of direction, the vision that gives me a clarity of the vision I want to imbue life with, or that I want to find in my own life. So very big philosophical energy, very subconscious also, because Jupiter also rules our belief systems, conscious and mostly unconscious. Venus and Jupiter coming together, we merge both of these archetypes and they tell us, oh, this is a new beginning. A new cycle is beginning right now in regards to how your values, the things that give you pleasure, and things that give you a sense of self-worth and lovability that we often tend to play out a lot through our relationships, Venus. How do you align that with the greater vision of your life? What gives you meaning? What maybe doesn't anymore? What kind of meaning or purpose is now empty? The value has gone. There is no intrinsic pleasure in the thing that maybe for the last cycle or the last 20 years has given you a lot of pleasure or joy or meaning and clarity to your life direction. The conjunction happens in Cancer, 14 degrees of Cancer. So the most important part for you individually is where and how that falls in your own chart. Where does 14 degrees of Cancer sit? Are you Cancer rising or are you Capricorn rising? And then Cancer would be in the opposite sign, right? So the house position tells us where and how we experience the blossoming or at least the seeding moment of this new cycle that eventually, hopefully, will turn into blossoming. Working consciously and creatively in alignment with these cycles, of course, helps us to become more energetically aligned to their expression. So it doesn't have to be a cycle that can be played out unconsciously, like it does for the most time, for most of humanity. But the tool of astrology is, of course, so amazing because it helps us to really consciously connect with the energetics of a certain moment. So a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in the sign of Cancer. The emotions, emotional safety, belonging, where you live, where you feel like you've got a sense of root or family even. And with that also the past, your ancestral past, your familial past, but also things that gave you maybe a sense of security and safety up until this moment that maybe now want and need to be transformed so that they can make space for greater vision of the things that give you pleasure, feel aligned with your values, Venus, connect you to your emotions, give a sense of emotional belonging and emotional resonance and emotional deep intimacy and connection with other people. That's what Cancer really looks for. It's a safety through emotional bonds that Cancer is looking for. It's not safety in and of itself, but safety through emotional connection that we're seeking with the Cancer archetype. And how is maybe the old Cancer shell of the exoskeleton of the crab, not serving the new greater life expansion and abundance that Jupiter now wants to bring. So this is one question I can give you here. Where and how are there emotional patterns that don't serve you any longer, that maybe gave you a sense of meaning or purpose or clarity or vision that you believed in, that you invested yourself in, which have now become empty or stale, or at least not serving the flow of life anymore, filling you with fresh emotional waters? And where and how have your values shifted to you maybe desiring something different now that in the past you didn't? Where and how do emotional connections come in here that give you a sense of resonance, whether that's with your work, with your spiritual path, with your partnerships, with your children, with your own health, with your own inner sense of values and worthiness, all of these different houses. So it's a very beautiful, it's a very powerful moment. The last time they came together was in the end of May 2024. So it's been a moment. Right now you can see them as morning stars before the sunrise, right? We're in Leo season and they happen to be in Cancer. So you can only see them in the sky with your naked eye before sunrise. And like always, nothing happens in isolation. What else is going on right now? We had this very potent full moon, Aquarius, Leo axis, which already talks so much about how and where is my heart invested and seen, where do I feel true to myself and my authentic nature. Leo can express itself in group endeavors, in collectives, in communities, or in ways that I want to give of my heart and my essence, Leo, to a greater collective vision. That maybe Aquarius likes to work on utopian things, utopian ideals, things for the future, things that uplift the collective. Where and how can I invest my own creative self, my own energy, my own heart, the essence of my being? And where and how do I maybe feel misaligned or exiled or like I don't belong? Or where and how am I maybe trying to prove myself, the mask of Leo, in order to get applause and attention, but am not really authentic any longer? And this again brings us to this deeper Cancer archetype, the more sensitive, inner, emotional nature of what is this really about? Where do you really go? What vision serves your life and is in alignment with your values and makes you feel emotionally safe and coherent and like you are in connection and belonging with other people around you? Where and how do you want to begin a new cycle here? What kind of seeds can you plant right now that help you to grow into a bigger version of yourself? The last cycle began in Taurus, 29 degrees of Taurus, a very, very last degree of Taurus, showing a transformation or an expansion in our sense of rootedness in our physical body and vessel. A lot of issues around money, worthiness, health, all of these earthy things. But now the new cycle is beginning in Cancer. And interestingly, the next one will happen in June of next year, 2026, and will also begin in Cancer again. This one is on 14 degrees, the next one will be on 25 degrees of Cancer. So this cycle will go until early June of next year. The other thing that's of course also in the field right now is that Mercury in the last couple of days stationed to go direct. So it's barely moving. Its energy is very focused right now, and Mercury is in Leo and has been in Leo for the entire retrograde, bringing us back to where and how do I need to rewrite certain stories in my mind, in my thoughts, in my subconscious patterns, where and how I think and speak to myself, that help me step into greater sovereignty, leadership, authenticity, and the boldness and bigness of my being, all of the Leo archetype. But because Mercury now at the very end of its retrograde is stationing on 4 degrees of Leo, it's opposite Pluto. And just like the weekend and the full moon and the Mars oppositions, Mars in early Libra opposite Neptune and Saturn in early Aries, now Mercury opposite Pluto, it's still in effect for the next 4, 5, 6 days until maybe August 18th. Before it takes up enough speed again and moves further along so that the conjunction wanes, the energy is dissipating. But Pluto can bring up what? Pluto can bring up very deep, unprocessed emotions. It often can bring up deep-seated grief or rage, which is quite infantile. It's not the rage and energy of Mars, the natural aggression of Mars to assert our individuality and our will, but it can be a deeper sense of grief or anger. It's overwhelming anger, this infantile, very, very, very early kind of overwhelming anger that psychologists, psychoanalysts like to call the it anger. It's a Freudian concept. So it's not the ego itself with the self-assertion drive, my ego, your ego, but it's this deeper, more uncontrollable part of our being, which often carries a lot of unresolved feelings from very, very early childhood. But that is, of course, also the same energy, Pluto, that helps us to propel our life forward a lot with intensity, with vigor, with an uncompromising, relentless ruthlessness. It can destroy things, often first to our shock or suffering as a human ego personality, because it encapsulates a deeper drive of life to evolve and to move on and to step into greater states of power and empowerment. And so it likes to also unconsciously destroy what many people call self-manipulating, can often stem from Pluto complexes, Pluto issues. Because we consciously, with our own mind, Mercury, might have an idea about who we want to be or how life ought to be or how we can be in control, all of these also bright Leo archetypes. But then there's something deeper. There's something more powerful. There's the self with a capital S that truly wants to run our life. The higher self, the soul, whatever you want to call it. And the more we resisting it, the more this part has to come up, the unconscious pattern, the unconscious unresolved emotional and nervous system dysregulation that takes us over, can explode with this anger or rage, or accidental accidents. We bump into things, we hurt ourselves, we blurt out something in order to facilitate change and transformation that otherwise we might resist. Again, Mercury is opposite Pluto, so a lot of very deep stuff might surface these days into our mind, into our awareness, into our conscious thoughts and patterns. Again, I keep on saying this with every retrograde, but don't think that the retrograde process is actually when you will see the manifestation of the deeper work. Often when a planet is retrograde, even something as fleeting as a Mercury retrograde every 3 months, it's usually in the retrograde period when the planet moves backwards, seems to move backwards in the sky, that there's a deeper unconscious, deep subconscious processes moving about in our system, in our psyche, in our nervous system. And it's only once a planet goes direct again that the manifestation, that the outer world manifestation of all the work that we did internally, which mostly was unconscious, can start to become manifest, and we gain, again, a sense of clarity. Both Mercury going direct opposite Pluto and the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, they both speak about a deep life impacting kind of clarity that might come into our awareness these couple of days. It will take Mercury until August 25th, so around like 11, 12 more days from when I upload this video, to cross the degree where it's stationed retrograde. And it's usually also on that kind of day when Mercury crosses its shadow zone that the true forward momentum is coming online into our field, that the outer world starts to mirror back to us all the deeper inner psycho-emotional work that has been happening. The energetic shifts, they need a moment in time to be reflected in linear space-time. This domain moves quite slow, in case you haven't noticed. So this moment feels very pivotal in regards to gaining a sense of clarity, in regards to finding a greater clarity on life direction in general. It's the combination of all three of these things, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Cancer, the Jupiter in Cancer anyhow, the seeking for belonging, the quest for belonging that we're all on right now, the deeper yearning for emotional safety and containment, connection and community that drives us to find a deeper cause of meaning, of purpose, of clarity, of vision for our life, that yearns for connection a lot, that yearns for emotional safety a lot, but that also asks us to strip away the old crab shell. I said this metaphor before, but the Cancer archetype is often not as much associated with transformation as Scorpio is, and with Scorpio we tend to invoke a lot the image of the snake shedding its skin as the sign of death, rebirth, renewal, rebirth. Whereas Cancer crabs in the actual ocean or by the sea, they tend to outgrow their exoskeleton, their hard shell that contains the squishy, soft, vulnerable inside of us, of our inner children. The things that feel that they're too sensitive and too vulnerable to be directly exposed to the outer world. And so we can have a very hard wall with Cancer. But when crabs outgrow their exoskeleton, they go through this process called molting, where the new skeleton is being formed, but it's still super squishy, and they need to get out of the hard exoskeleton. And for a couple of days, they are in the water again, they're out in the open, highly vulnerable because the new exoskeleton, the new crab shell, has not hardened yet, but the old one had to be left behind. The old home, the old container and containment of ourselves, right? Also this is why I keep on doing this hand movement, right? Because the Cancer glyph is these two interlocking sixes, right? These two interlocking spirals, talking about the spiral lunar nature of Cancer, but also the emotional safe space that is being contained in between, and the hard outer shell that is protecting that. Every now and then we need to strip that. We need to embrace a moment of vulnerability and uncertainty and unclarity. And that also brings in the deeper Jupiter lessons, of course, of learning to trust our intuition, feeling an intuitive call for higher vision, a deeper vision, a more meaningful life experience, a more meaningful expression of our individuality or of our emotional reality that does not necessarily know and can see and oversee the plan and where exactly it will lead us or how exactly we need to act in order to play it out. But if we just have to make these leaps of faith to trust our intuitive calling, to trust something deeper, because it happens in Cancer. It can be very subtle, very emotional, can come a lot maybe in dreams, or maybe you only get that clarity when you sit opposite another. Mercury Pluto opposition can get activated there a lot because the dynamic for projection has been so strong in the field right now, and projecting this anger, projecting feelings of powerlessness, and where we don't stand in our sovereignty, or where we're not authentic, where we're not true to ourselves, where we feel disconnected from ourselves. But instead of owning that and seeing like, oh, the only thing I'm longing for is not this faraway place or this amazing whatever outer world gratification, but it's actually just the inner feeling of being connected to my essence, being true to who I am, feeling myself, and being able to be present with that and living from that state and nothing else. So the Jupiter energy, the Jupiter lesson will be one that will invite us a lot here to trust our intuitive, emotional calling, to pay attention to dreams or little symbols, to things from the past, emotional connections, melancholic remembrances of the past that maybe suddenly give you a new clue. This is the funny thing with Cancer. It can go so much into the past, but then that's actually the magical doorway to help us move forward into a higher future. There's so much treasure stored in the emotional storehouse of our subconscious, and going in there often yields a new pearl, a new hidden gold nugget that was buried under the salt water of the sea. And the reflective nature of emotional and quite often melancholic remembrance of things of the past that touched us in a moment in time, people, persons, situations, little objects that are stored or like imbued with a lot of emotional resonance, they can help us access these states. And this is where we often find a lot of insight to move then forward into Jupiter. Higher new expansions that stand in alignment with Venus, our love, our joy, our pleasure, and our deeper values. Thank you so much. It's very intense days. It's been very intense days. This energy definitely brings a sweetness of new beginnings that, like I just said, we can't really oversee the full scale of what this will grow into yet. But we're not meant to. We're just meant to trust this emotional calling, to see where are we in alignment, where can we be authentic, where can we not. Where do we project our anger and rage and feelings of powerless out to the world that actually ask us to claim that and own it for ourselves. So, thank you so much for listening, and I hope the microphone didn't just cut out here. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.